This Father's Day meditation was written by Rod Richard. On this Father's Day, we recognize the vast spectrum of experience and the often complicated feelings that surround such a celebration. We honor those fathers and father figures in our lives who have loved, supported, encouraged, and instructed us, and we seek to share these gifts with others. We mourn with those who mourn the loss of a father, and fathers who mourn the loss of a child, whether separated by death or estrangement. We support those for whom this day brings pain and sorrow, who suffered abandonment, neglect, or abuse. We support and celebrate the fathers in our midst who give of themselves to their children, recognizing all the strength and wisdom and stamina and love and time and honest introspection that fatherhood requires. We support those men who choose not to have children, yet who are present in loving and supportive ways to children, youth, and adults alike. And we seek to honor wherever we find ourselves today across this vast spectrum of experience, and to feel the compassion that embraces us within the silence.
My dad, James Belisle, was born in 1914 in Sabine Parish, Louisiana, near the town of Maney. His community was bilingual, English and Cajun, an antiquated rural French dialect. This group of French settlers had come from southwestern France to Arcadia, Canada, as farmers and fishermen. When the English conquered Canada, they refused to convert to the Church of England or swear an oath of loyalty to the English crown. So they were deported on ships and dropped off along the coast of the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico, without regard to family groups. The last of these groups was dropped off near New Orleans, but quickly migrated up the Mississippi to land they could farm. My father's French family was part of that group. In 1914, his father was a brakeman for a railroad. Railroads dominated moving both goods and people at the time, so it was a well-paid, unionized job. The family had moved briefly to Texarkana and then to Athens, Texas. My dad was the fifth of 7 children, one of 2 boys. The 2 older girls had graduated from college, and the older son was a journeyman carpenter. Railroads held on briefly. When the next daughter was in college, the stock market crashed. Railroads held on briefly, but his father was soon laid off, and the Depression had begun. His father struggled with both depression and alcohol, and was soon committed to a mental hospital where he died. My dad, at 16, was sent to a civilian conservation corps camp near Globe, Arizona. His love of the West began. He also fell in love with a 14-year-old Arizona girl, and they eloped and married. Her parents were furious and quickly had the marriage annulled. After he left the CCC camp, he moved back to Texas and found work near Dallas. Sometimes he drove a truck carrying moonshine and then worked for what became Hellman's Mayonnaise. He married again and became a long-time trucker to support the family. My half-sister and brother were born. He returned from one of those trips to find Jimmy Sue, my sister, alone with the baby. She was 5, and the baby was seriously ill. My dad rushed him to a hospital, where he soon died. This also ended that marriage. My mother was an Army nurse stationed near Fort Sill, Oklahoma. She spent her leave staying with friends in Dallas, and so they met here. When World War II began, they decided to get married, and he enlisted. She had to resign commission, and they moved to Corpus Christi. Because of his age, he was considered too old for combat and also had too many dependents. He was assigned to the post office there, and they also made occasional tours around the Gulf of Mexico to make sure no enemy ships had encroached in that area. Whether to have children was a big discussion. He didn't want to leave her with a child if he did go into combat and something happened to him. She said if something happened to him, she wanted something that was a part of him to be with her. I was born in April 1944, my brother in January 1946. You can tell who won the argument. Knowing the war was ending and he would soon be discharged, she came back to Dallas to begin the process of getting the house she owned in Oak Cliff back. Because of the housing shortage, the tenants had to be given several months to vacate, and she would stay with his mother and sisters in Dallas until they could move into the house. When my brother was born, his discharge was speeded up, and he rode a train to Dallas. He was greeted both by his newborn son and the news that his brother Roy was dead of a gunshot wound. It was never clear whether it was murder or suicide. Roy's youngest daughter was missing and never found. One son wouldn't respond at all, and the other spent hours strumming his guitar. He occasionally spoke to my half-sister, but no one else. Dad used his GI preference to get a job with the post office here. Because he often worked night, he got a puppy, a German Shepherd Collie mix, as protection. His rifle, which of course my mother could shoot, was also in the house, loaded but with the safety on. He took family vacations every year to my mother's family in Arkansas, Indiana, and Illinois, to the Great Lakes in Canada. We spent the week before Christmas and New Year's with his family in Louisiana. He became an avid photographer, developing his own black and white photos. When home movies came in, he made reel after reel after reel of those. He became a Freemason and was very involved there, and later as a Shriner. He was involved in the small Presbyterian church we went to, serving as a deacon and later as an elder there. When my brother got older, he became a cub master, then a scoutmaster for his pack and troop. He all supported me in Rainbow Girls, including its very officers, and my brother Indy Malay, as far as the city championship in tennis and second place at state level. Throughout all this time, he was a binge alcoholic. He didn't drink consistently, but 2 or 3 times a year went through about a week of serious drinking, then a weekend of my mother helping him with recovery. He also had a bleeding stomach ulcer, and these binges were passed off by his employers at work as problems with his ulcer. I think they really knew, but waved it off. We also began vacationing in Colorado, and he fell in love with the western slope of the Rockies. He bought a 4-wheel drive Jeep that would take off-road trips. He had learned of a second or third cousin who had settled in Colorado in an almost abandoned town called Ophir. When the gold and silver ran out, the mining company left, leaving about a dozen usable houses, but with no utilities, using charcoal stoves, kerosene lanterns, and water in from a nearby stream. We rented one of those houses every summer. We hunted rocks with ore, picked up wild raspberries along an abandoned railroad track, and fished and panned for gold in the nearby stream. My brother had enough for his first wedding ring to be made for gold he himself had panned. After both Malcolm and I left for college at UT Austin, some of the pressure financially was off. We moved once when we were old enough to need separate bedrooms, and the second time after I started college and my brother was still in high school, wanted a nicer place to bring his friends home. Dad also became involved with CB Radio Group and spent hours talking to truckers and others. He had also bought about 2 acres of land in a new development just outside Pueblo, Colorado. He knew they didn't want to winter in the mountains, but thought they could live year-round in Pueblo. My mother wanted to keep working, and there was a hospital in Pueblo that always needed RNs. He had a rough idea of what they wanted the new house to look like, and my boyfriend, John Serrano, who was an architectural draftsman, developed the plans for the house, and they hired a firm to build it from those plans. It was a very arid area, and the back of the house looked directly at Pikes Peak. When they moved, my mother immediately began planting flowers, and my dad planting fruit trees, and set up a small irrigation system for them. They loved hosting friends in the community and from the Dallas area. He had always been the serious family cook and handled most of the meals. He also served drinks, mostly wine now instead of bourbon, but never had a drinking problem again. He was involved in the new community, Pueblo West, starting a community newspaper and serving terms on the town council. He died in 1968 and had his ashes scattered from Ouray Peak on the western slope. It took 3 summers for them to clear enough of ice and snow to get there.
So you want to hear about my dad, do you? My dad was kind of a mystery. He always wore dark glasses everywhere he went. But I'm going to talk about the glasses later. When my dad was younger, he was a driver during the Prohibition, driving trucks of alcohol. This mob connection, I'm thinking, stayed with him all his life. My daughter-in-law and my niece, they were into genealogy. My dad's genealogy stopped with my dad. So what happened before then? Anyway, I had a love-hate relationship with my dad. He was an alcoholic also. He and I didn't always see eye to eye. But I'm not going to talk about the bad stuff. I'm going to talk about the good stuff. My dad loved animals. Dogs, cats, rabbits, ducks, chickens, we had them all. He brought a rabbit home one day. He was out walking with my brother and I, and found a rabbit, brought it home, and brought it into the house. The next day, my mother was furious because the rabbit chewed up her rug. It didn't matter. He just loved them all. I wonder where I got that from. And my dad was very affectionate. He loved his mother. He loved his wife. He loved us kids. As a matter of fact, when I got to my preteen years, I didn't want to be kissed on the mouth anymore. So I would turn my cheek, and he would kiss my cheek. But it was kind of a game that we had. He would aim for my mouth every time, and I would turn my cheek. Sometimes he made it, sometimes he didn't. But that was my dad. He taught me how to swim. When he was young, he was a lifeguard. He taught me how to swim in Lake Pontchartrain, if anybody knows that. He taught me how to ride a bike. He taught me how to dance. He would have me stand on his toes while he did the steps. And we would dance around the room and until I got too big and he couldn't pick up his feet anymore. On Sunday mornings, my brother and I would crawl into bed with him, and he would read us the funny papers. Every one. He would tell us stories at night. He would start with, once upon a time, there was a little girl named Bootsy, that was me, and a little boy named Sonny, that was my brother. And he would go on making up as he went along, whatever he wanted to say. He loved movies. He took us, I can remember us walking to the neighborhood movies every year, every now and then. And he was very smart. He was a math genius. And he was very creative. I wonder where I got that from. And he cooked. And the more he had to drink, the more exotic his spaghetti sauce became. He was pretty much a homebody. He liked doing things around the house. He liked painting, never bought a house, always rented. But he would paint walls, and he would mow the lawn and plant trees. He liked all of that. He was a genius at math. But getting back to the dark glasses, my dad was very emotional. Every milestone my brother or I or he had in his life, he would be crying. Wonder where I get that from. So he wore dark glasses so no one would see the tears. My dad was amazing. And I thank God or the Spirit or whatever you want to call it, energy, for all the dads in this world. And that's my story.
Our closing words today are titled, Blessed by Our Connections by Susan Carlson. We leave blessed by our connections to one another, to the Spirit of life. Walk lightly that you see the life that is below your feet. Spread your arms as if you had wings and could dance through the air. Feel the joy of the breath in your lungs and the fire in your heart. Live to love and be a blessing on this earth.